Thank you for signing up for Theatre in Africa webinar series. Your presence and contribution is highly valued.
Kenya International Theatre Festival, an annual theatre festival that celebrates Kenyan theatre and also stimulates artists and audiences by bringing international acts from across the world to showcase theatre and also to interact and experience other cultures from around the world. It has been a fulfilling experience, growing each year, trying new things, experimenting with new activities and new ideas.
It actually creates opportunities for us to network further and get other opportunities.
You're coming to watch performance, you're coming to learn new culture, you're coming to interact with other people and create networks, know what others and where they are in terms of theatre, their productions, their technique.
Above all, it's in Africa and we just love Kenya. It's a beautiful country.
Previously on Theatre in Africa webinar.
I can start with the recent festival I did. For me to run like a few online live stuff, I had to go to use a conference hall, but again, I was limited to 30 people in a hall that sits about 5,000 or 3,000 people.
The fact that theatre, arts and performance has not been held and regarded as highly as you asked, as you know, your medicine, your law and all the other professions. Therefore, taking care of the theatre practitioners doesn't come really high on the priority list of how to reopen that economic space.
Well, at the moment, we're what we call stage 3 of our lockdown, and that enables us to have a maximum of 50 people in the audience. So our biggest theatre seats 1,069. So it's a challenge. So we won't be able to make any returns on any of the work that we put out. So what we have opted to do is really go for the online option. So what we're doing is that right now we're doing very short seasons. We have audiences in there so that the performers are able to respond off of an audience, but the whole thing is to record it, and to record it in a way that really comes across strongly online. And similarly, we do have internet connectivities there, but it's not universal.
My worry when it comes to virtual theater is I always think about my grandmother who does not have a smartphone, my grandmother and her friends who do not have a computer and have no access to the internet. Because when we create productions virtually, they can be accessed on YouTube, and you need you need data. If you're using your phone, you still need mobile data to access those productions. Those of us that that live in the cities maybe have some access to the internet. But what about people who don't have that kind of access?
It's really affected the situation, but now it's a little bit open. We have started performing 1 week ago only. We started to open the theaters for the audience under the conditions of 25% of occupation only. As most of you said, it's fully booked. That means the community is hunger and starving to see theater again and again.
Up next on Theatre in Africa webinar.
So I want to greet each and every one of us again. It's a wonderful evening. So this is our second webinar. The first webinar happened last week, and we were looking at the effects of COVID in the theatre industry. And we had such a wonderful time. So for each and every one of you who missed that webinar, you can check it on all our social media platforms. That's Kenya International Theatre Festival, and you get to hear all the discussions, what the discussion was all about. My name is Peter Mushoki, and I'm so glad to host you today. And today we have such a powerful panel. I'm sure that we're going to have a wonderful time. And today we're going to be looking at how theatre can adapt during this particular season. I know it has been very tough for theatre practitioners. It has been very tough for artists because of the limited performances in our theatre auditoriums. And we want to see, is there hope for our theatre industry, not just in the whole world, but specifically here in Africa.
Our topic today is how can theatre adapt to the COVID-19 pandemic? On our panel are Huithmang Polo, Deputy Director, Performing, Visual Arts and Crafts, Free State Provincial Government; Mazen El Garabawi, Professional Actor and Director, Founder and President of Sharm El Sheikh International Theatre Festival for Youth; Promise Nyatepe Nyatwame, PhD, Lecturer, Department of Theatre and Film Studies, University of Cape Coast; and Professor John Mugubi, Dean, School of Creative and Performing Arts, Media and Film Studies at Kenyatta University. Our moderator is Python Muchoki, organized by Kenya International Theatre Festival, connecting cultures through theatre.
So we can move on straight to our discussion for today. I'm asking, are we seeing the slow and painful death of theatre, especially that has been caused by COVID-19? Is the theatre industry at large on the ICU bed?
I do not think that the theatre industry is on its deathbed. I would say that the COVID-19 pandemic has had devastating effects, not just on theatre, but on the creative arts industry worldwide. But it doesn't mean that this is the end, this is the death of theatre. A survey done in America indicates that found out that about 62% of artists are fully unemployed in the States, and more than 94% have experienced a loss of income from this particular pandemic. Of course, with audiences isolating at home, venues shuttered, events cancelled, and freelancers' paychecks melting away, the art industry in Africa, which operates almost exclusively from public spaces, is scrambling to reinvent itself, especially online. So I would talk of not the death, but we may need to rethink, because there's so many things, restrictions that have come up that necessitate our rethinking the spaces, the theatre spaces. Social distancing, I would say, comes at a great price for both artists and audiences. And as artists, we need to respond to this challenge with the kind of ingenuity you'd expect from highly creative minds. We are highly creative people. Artists are survivors who know how to mold ourselves to fit our needs, and we are used to solving problems with very little. One obvious option, of course, is to embrace technology to record virtual renditions of theatrical enactments from our home. We have to adapt to shutdowns by swapping physical spaces for virtual ones at the moment. I know there are those who will say that will adulterate, and actually it does adulterate the very essence of theatre, which is the mutual presence of a performance and audience in the same space, sharing the same air. And that is not possible in the current situation. In a proper theatre, the audience actually affects the performance and drives every aspect of developing a theatrical performance. Inevitably, some rules may just have to be broken. This is a temporary situation, and we have to adjust to a new reality. We'll have to find solutions in order to support each other. Thespians in other parts of the world and their enactments are actually getting millions of views. So we just need to rethink because of the new situation, but theatre is not dead.
Thank you, Professor. Let me go to Huithmang Polo from South Africa. We say that regardless of everything, the show has to go on. So I want to ask you, there down in South Africa, has the show been going on since COVID started?
Yes, thank you, Python. I'm saying that, during these uncertain times, it is critical that theatre makers avoid the urge to throw up their hands. I think, like Prof is saying, that we need to break some rules. We cannot be stuck with conventional theatre, but we need to act out of pure instinct. And I'm saying instinct because we are not certain of COVID-19 and post-COVID-19 audiences, what the audience appetite for theatre would be. So one thing that comes to mind, or as a proposal or an idea, is that we as theatre makers, we will need to meet our customers in surprising and unexpected ways. Already the crisis has prompted a scramble to find productions and methods that are coronavirus compliant. And like Prof has said, the only route that is now happening is recorded productions, which can be available online as well as on or at home to watch. But also, I think within that space, we are aware that a number of sectors are also running online to provide services, and audiences are dwindling because now there's so much available. So we need to remind ourselves of the great worth of theater, and that is the electricity that we have. So it means that there must be collaboration between us theater directors and the audiovisual sector, where we are able to at least maintain that connectivity between the performer and the audience. And from the management side, it's also important for those who are responsible for mandate and vision to explore new strategies of either coming fast on recovery or slowly. And this would mean a number of engagement and implications and development of strategies. But over and above that, I think that as theatre makers also, we should begin to stand up and maybe invade television. I mean, truly, we have been experiencing, numbers dropping from theater attendance into physical spaces. And maybe this is the time where we now need to look at new ways of getting channels on paid up channels on television where you can still have proper theater. It's beginning to happen by streaming what has been recorded. So I think if we can tap into that, at least theater would still be alive. But it's not dying. We are there. We cannot allow it to die.
Our topic today is how can theatre adapt to the COVID-19 pandemic, organized by Kenya International Theatre Festival, connecting cultures through theatre.
Professor Mugubi has talked about rethinking and trying to come up with new strategies. And the very essence of theater is the live theatrical experience of the audience. So how do we adapt? How do we change our scriptings and our performances, even as we use the online platform, yet we still maintain, the substance of theater itself? How do we ensure that we give the audience that live theatrical experience?
Thank you. The COVID experience for me, it's more like an emergency because the problems and the challenges we face, and of course the new innovative ways that the COVID situation has, offered us, have long, been begging for attention because, TV, film, video, digital satellite have, served to be competitors to live theater for decades. And so the opportunity for us to explore the digital space, particularly in virtual theater, for me is a new opportunity. But this opportunity has to be properly looked at in a very holistic, sustainable way, because the very problems that is confronting the creative and cultural, sector has a lot to do with the workers in the field, the workers in the landscape of the cultural and creative institutions. And it appears a lot more attention has been, focused on the institution without, key regard to the workers in there. So for me, the virtual space in itself is just a platform, but in exploring that for our collective interest and to sustain culture and therefore the artistic process of theater, we really need to ensure that the intent of theater, the message, the morale, if you like, for society and therefore the audience, it's not lost on us. Those of us who are producing or the creators or the performers, we must make sure that the message is still potent important and relevant to the needs of the audiences, particularly to their present times. And now that COVID is here, what are we really doing? Back here in Ghana, most of our practitioners have seen the need to quickly adapt. So even before the COVID came in, they were finding ways of blending the live theater experience with the technological, offerings. And so the multimedia approach was one way, Ghanaian theater practitioners have adopted. So the virtual experience is now an opportunity for them to up their game, up their skills, the use of technology in doing so. So what is happening currently is a lot more, attention to radio, drama, and of course, short video recordings. And all these are being done through the medium of digital technological platforms like YouTube and other platforms. And so currently that is what is happening. And my interactions with one famous and active practitioner in the field a couple of days ago revealed that he has been arguably the first in Africa and probably in the world to be able to consciously work on a COVID-related play, and to have even started production back, around sometime 30th April. And this is something he's been sustaining. He had a second production recently focusing on the national chief imam, and this was targeted at the Muslim community to prevent people from going out. And others are resorting to radio drama to complement that. And so currently, these are some of the ways that our theater practitioners are exploring the virtual space.
Thank you, Dr. Promise. We want to move on to Egypt, and we want to speak to Mazen. Mazen, you're an actor. You're also a director. Kindly tell us, since COVID started, have you been able to put up a play? And number two, you run a festival that is called the Sharm El Sheikh International Theatre Festival for the Youth. And I know this year would have been the fifth edition. You could also tell us more about the festival and if it happened.
Yes, at first I need to hello everybody in this event. And also I need to thank Mr. Kevin for inviting me to be with you to share my experience in Egypt, in theater in Egypt. And also I'm very happy to join this Zoom meeting with my colleagues from many countries in Africa. It's a very pleasure for me. To answer your question, at first, we already postponed our fifth edition of our festival called Sharm El Sheikh International Theatre Festival for Youth. Postponed from April 20, and we will announce about the day of our festival. We already saw the negative effect of COVID-19 pandemic all over the world. We already saw many negative effects in theater generally, and also if we need to answer this question, the main question, if we can adapt the theater based on COVID-19 pandemic, I think we cannot adapt the theater in any time or in any cases, but we can adapt the production. Based on the situation, based on the COVID-19 pandemic, and so we can get the answer for all over the world for many theater people in Africa. And also, if we need to focus for the Egyptian theater during COVID-19 pandemic, we can focus on two lines. The first line, we will see all events, all festivals, any culture event in Egypt stopped during the COVID-19 pandemic. This is the first issue or first line. And the second line, we already have a good initiative from the Ministry of Culture in Egypt. Her Excellency, Dr. Ines Abdel Daim, the Minister of Culture in Egypt, she already created a good initiative in our country called The Culture in Your Hands. She already created the official channel on YouTube by the Ministry of Culture in Egypt. And also this channel opened many gates for culture, for production, for performances. And also we already another channel to make the production. We already know all productions stopped during the COVID-19, but we already when opened the channel on YouTube by Ministry of Culture, we already opened many gates to create a new production, a theatrical production in Egypt. And also I already participated in one of this. I already directed and adapted my new performance called Famous Not Famous during the COVID-19 pandemic. And also we already make this small performance based on the situation in Egypt of COVID-19 pandemic. But I need to inform you and also many colleagues from many countries in Africa that production not stopped during the COVID-19 pandemic, but festivals stopped. They stopped already. Many festivals, many events stopped. But the production not stopped because we already opened a new channel and a new gay opportunity to all people in culture to make a new production. I already made this my performance called Famous Not Famous and adapted and directed by me, and also we already recorded and publish it on YouTube on the channel of the Ministry of Culture to make the bridge between us and between all audience and all people. So if we focus on the situation in Egypt about the theater, we will see that all events stopped, but culture not stopped.
Thank you so much, Mazen. I think I've gotten something that even though some of the festivals have stopped, the productions should still continue. And not just the festivals, Professor Mugubi, but let's go to the academia world. Does it mean that now we may need to teach our students other skills apart from acting and production, to things like monetizing your social media accounts, to live streaming because of this particular pandemic? Professor?
Indeed, this poses a challenge. At our place at Kenyatta University, we are working on curricula for blended teaching. We don't know how that will work out. We acknowledge that there are certain components, heavy components of theater that cannot be taught online. But definitely, as I had mentioned before, the shift now is towards online, and the necessity for funds, now that artists have been affected a lot, the necessity for funds definitely will inspire creative, uplifting and original fundraising ideas. Some local theaters are finding ways to record artists and put them on YouTube channels. This started even way before COVID, Facebook and their own websites. And on a national scale, we may need to find ways of releasing theatrical enactments to be streamed to those who buy a ticket. I agree with Goitsemang Foldo that probably the broadcasters may help us. He's lucky that he's down south where he may really agitate for a channel for DSTV, just for theatrical enactments where people can pay to watch that particular channel. It is happening in other parts of the world. So this is a time to be innovative and to really push our enactments on the digital platform for people to know actually that we exist. And of course, there are those who do not appreciate going to theater physically. Probably they may enjoy much more what they watch on online. Yeah, so it's a new thing, and everybody is challenged, but I believe this will open doors once we've mastered, the way forward in terms of how to market the online platform. But it is happening in other parts of the world. Even locally, I would say somebody like Desagu, for those who watch Desagu's enactments, those are not films, those are theatrical enactments, and you may want to see how many views he has. He does very well. So it is possible actually to make money through the online platform, not necessarily people coming to an auditorium, but also we have limitation in terms of how many people can be in one place. Probably we can also roll out small concerts, mostly solo concerts where people can socially distance. Since this industry will take the longest to recover and open up completely, as artists, we have to come up with creative solutions, drive-in concerts or something like that. It is happening in other parts of the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. You've spoken about, inventing other spaces. And I want to go to Mr. Follow, who is a director in South Africa. Apart from the digital space, do we have any other space? So we know that we are limited. We can't access our theater spaces or the theater auditoriums. And so apart from the social, space, is there any other space that we can explore as artists?
Yes, Python. There are alternative spaces that can still be utilized. One would speak about what the Makhanda National Arts Festival, the one that used to be called Grahamstown. What they have done, they did not cancel the National Arts Festival at all, but instead they went virtual. So theater companies and actors and other artists shooting all kinds of productions, not necessarily in your physical space like a theater, but they are shooting different kinds of productions in any available spaces that are there, and they're able to upload this back to the festival. And fortunately, the festival has also found a technique in which people can be able to pay to view these productions. And also, interesting enough, there's a new production. I think it started running this week. It's called The Art of Facing Fear. They call it an online live interactive digital theater. It is directed by a director from Brazil, and they are using Zoom Medium as their stage. So international actors from all countries, including South Africa, they have turned their cupboards, their bathrooms, their kitchens into acting spaces. And this proves that beyond just the physical space of the theater, anywhere, any space is a space as long as there's audience that can watch the activity that is happening. So yes, in a nutshell, there are alternative spaces that are still existing beyond your normal physical theaters.
Our topic today is how can theatre adapt to the COVID-19 pandemic, organized by Kenya International Theatre Festival, connecting cultures through theatre.
Still on you, Follow, and especially when it comes to production companies, how are they adapting? Because some have had a challenge of, paying their bills and rent. They have had, big numbers of, cast and crew. What would be your advice in order for production companies to, survive during this season? And they have property, or they do rent out, spaces for their performances. What would be your advice to them?
Fortunately, in South Africa, our national government has released relief funding for all kinds of artists. So at least there is some relief that is coming from government for artists to be able to practice. But my advice on theater companies, I think I've developed my own theory to say COVID-19 is actually the first phase of the fourth industrial revolution. So in a sense, it means that we need to relook at how we are writing our scripts. We have come to a point where we cannot afford to have large cast members. I would advise the writers for the future to consider writing for minimal cast, but not necessarily losing the essence of the story, because I think it also pushes the actors themselves to do more than what they have been doing. This is an opportunity for them to explore doing multiple characters, like what you have in Woza Albert, what you had in Jika. These are some of the new styles now that we need to look at, where we can still maintain a large cast but with few actors, and that is my advice. Remember that also the challenge for distribution has always been there. Large cast numbers, we have not been able to move those productions around. So this is an opportunity now also to tone down on the number of the traveling groups so that we are able to distribute these productions. And lastly, maybe also, even though it's not a good one, but also now that we are going online as a platform, remember there's also a challenge of accessing that online in terms of data. So we will also have to look at the duration of our production. What comes to mind is also maybe instead having a fully fledged 2-hour production or an hour production, we need to look at presenting scenes, presenting episodes of a full production, but in shorter durations, so that our audiences, especially those in the communities and the villages who have limited access to data, they are able to access those online platforms.
Thank you so much, Paulo. You've mentioned about the digital space, and I want to engage Dr. Promise. If you can hear me, Dr. Promise, still on the digital space, are we there as Africans? Is it possible for us to, monetize and, create revenue out of the digital space? And if so, how can we go about it, as independent artists?
Thank you. Of course, we can monetize the digital space. Globalization in itself is an opportunity for us to be able to measure up to what is happening elsewhere. And so we have to rise up to the call. Now, technology has its own language, has its own demands. Are we up to the task? It starts from there. It's not about knowledge, it's about skill and how you explore all this in your collective effort to be able to achieve your goal. So in terms of skill, acquisition, are we up to the task? So it calls for us to be able to look at even a multidisciplinary approach to how we teach and practice theater. So artists, if you are not technologically savvy, and this is called, a unique opportunity for you to be able to, rise up to the call, because you can't do without computers, you can't do without the internet, you can't do without, other technological, requirements. And so even if you don't have the tools and you have the skill, how can you, make use of that to be able to, project your creative work onto the digital space as to earn something? Because, for instance, if you look at a platform like YouTube and the others, you have to measure up to a certain threshold in terms of viewership. That in itself is a requirement before you can monetize your creative, work. So if you haven't got what it takes to be able to even put a good material together, to be able to engage audiences who will become fans for you, and so you develop a brand that can attract more. The more audiences you have, the more you have the opportunity to monetize. Then you can't go anywhere. So that, for me, that is the point. Artists need to rise up to the call, up their game. But then, at the end of the day, who foots the bill? And for me, that is the problem. And here we are today. If we don't look at the situation beyond today, and the visible issues, problems you are facing today, we may be missing the point. For me, it is a sustainable approach that we need to look at, because we have a lot of freelance, artists in the system, and they don't get paid well. So you can imagine a very good, talented artist, all right? But that artist will need a lot of money to be able to up his or her skill, to be able to measure up to what it takes to monetize his or her work. And so we need to look at that, in terms of what policy and policy making can also offer. And so if we are calling on governments to help, this is a direction we want to be looking at, so that we don't sacrifice, diversity in the landscape of creative cultural work. Because we have people who, for instance, here in Ghana, are employed in the government sector. We can talk about the National Commission on Culture, the Ghana National Theatre, and we have the regional and district centers of national culture. And these ones are in the public governmental sector. And so they are covered because they are on government payroll. But what about the artists, those who just have to depend on gigs, freelancers? What happens to them? And we need to look at those. And they are in the informal sector. And so we need to look at all this and come up with a very thorough regulatory framework to be able to give us a very sustainable approach to all this, so that we can make space for all this in terms of how artists can up their skill and what it takes for them to up their skill to be able to have what it takes to monetize properly.
Thank you, Daktari. If I could go very briefly to Professor Mugubi. There are some artists who are not in the urban places. There are some artists who don't have access to internet. So telling them to go to the digital space is a bit hard for them. I'll give an example of my pastor. So what he did, because the churches are closed, he went to an estate where they have apartments and you have balconies. So instead of, gathering people, the people just stood on their balconies, and then he just started, singing, and, it was theater by itself. So, Professor, for people who don't have access to internet, are you telling them that there is no hope for them?
I mentioned that it's also possible. There's the restrictions in terms of numbers of people who can attend. So it's still possible to roll out small concerts where people can socially distance, 15 people, whatever, you're still, and remember that theater actually started from the homes, storytelling, like in the African situation, storytelling and all that. So you can still practice theater very well in the homes, but out there, maintaining social distance and then the restrictions in terms of numbers is still possible. You've given a very good examples that may work with people with balconies. What about those who have no balconies? Probably it would work best if they performed to very small audiences. But like I said, these mostly will be solo performances. Gusemang also mentioned the different kind of spaces. So we can still practice our theater at home in the different spaces and then share. If possible, online. For those who cannot access internet, then just do it, just do it at home or in very small social gatherings with, of course, with permission. It's a difficult situation, and we just have to navigate through the situation the best way possible.
Our topic today is how can theatre adapt to the COVID-19 pandemic, organized by Kenya International Theatre Festival, connecting cultures through theatre.
In regard to funding, what's the role of funding? I know it's very critical, and especially putting up performances or even in the digital space, you need a few equipments. What's the role of funding, and how can we access funding? I know also government is a key stakeholder also in the theatre industry. What would you say is the role of funding, and how can we be creative in regards to funding?
The main role of funding, I will speak about our situation in Egypt, because we already have two ways for funding. The first way is for government, for many ministries, which participate and sponsor the main sponsors of our festival, like Ministry of Culture in Egypt, Ministry of Youth, Ministry of Tourism, also the governor of South Sinai. This is main sponsors or governmental sponsors for our festival. They played the main role of funding of our festival. And the second way, if we can catch funding from another associations all over the world, we already opened many gates, and made and signed many protocols all over the world with many associations, with many festivals to make the cooperation between each other. So you know, and every director of festival in Africa or any country, the main role of funding. Without funding, you cannot make your event. A small event or big event, you cannot make your festival. We already see the situation all over the world, also based on the COVID-19 pandemic. So we will try, and we will try to get a new ideas for funding, for cooperation between many associations all over the world, because we already know the situation about the economic situation for funding any event or any festival in all over the world. So we will try and we will do our best. We will do our best in to create and establish a new connections with many associations all over the world, plus the fund from the governmental sponsors like ministry. They are the main sponsors, Ministry of Culture and the governor of Sinai, and Ministry of Youth and Ministry of Tourism. So we will try to add more sponsors, more association to fund our festival, to fund our event in the future. But already we saw, without funding, small funding or big funding, without funding, you cannot make your event, and you cannot make your festival.
Thank you, Mazen. Let me go back to Gretzman Polo. I have two questions for you. Is there a way that you can hold, a production, without using a lot of costs? And my second question would be, what's the future of, Broadway and things like musical plays that engage a lot of actors on stage and they are high cost budget?
Yes, Python, there is a way to still make theater with limited costs. In South Africa, we have been exploring new ways. Alternative space is a big word in South Africa in terms of theater. People are now using backyard spaces to give performances to closer families, people within the village. And that has been the trend even before COVID-19. Because remember that despite COVID-19, there are other major challenges that have been killing theater. Crime has been one of them, because now people cannot travel to theaters. Secondly, levels of unemployment. People cannot afford to pay for transport fare and still pay for a ticket fare. So it has pushed us in South Africa to explore alternative spaces, and exploring alternative spaces forces us to stage production with very limited production fees. So yes, it's true. There's still possibilities of doing that, and it has been happening. As for the future of Broadway and musical productions, I think this is going to be one of the rarefied entertainment. And it will eventually go back to being an entertainment for the elite, because there are still people who are patrons of theater who would still go, even if it is said that only 15 people can go into the theater, you will still get those people. So Big musical productions, yes, they will still succeed if they get funding. And obviously, funding will come to private financiers who are patrons of theater and musicals. So it will be for the elite, but we might not see it popular as it used to be in the past.
Thank you, Polo. So, Professor Mugubi, I was asking you about the curriculum. Will we see a drop in the enrollment of theater students, and then will the curriculum change hereafter?
The curriculum, this is a temporary situation. Of course, we don't know how long COVID will be with us, but during this pandemic, of course, we have changed a few things in terms of the curriculum, working towards a blended approach where whatever can be taught online is taught online. But we also acknowledge that theater being very practical, there are certain activities that you cannot execute online. You have to do that face to face. But there are things that we also acknowledge, there are certain activities that people thought could not be done online, which can be done. For instance, writers and performers can match up after a series of video calls discussing what they want to make. The writer writes the actor a piece with guidance from a director. The actor rehearses at home with the director Skyping or Zooming in. They film their piece. Every actor knows how to self-tape, and then it is streamed online. Of course, a different way of doing things which might demoralize certain people in the theater arts space. But it's a temporary situation, and we just have to, of course, change with the times, because we are living in ever-changing times. But as they say, change always offers people an opportunity to rethink even the curriculum. It's easy, even when it comes to teaching, to get into your routine and stay with it. But when a challenging circumstance switches things up, this is your opportunity to adapt and grow. So also as academicians, we have to teach theater differently. For instance, we hear that probably, although we are preparing for reopening in September, with that kind of structure in mind, face-to-face and then online, we may not meet our students until January. So what do we do? Whatever we can teach online, we'll just go ahead and do that and wait for the students to come for us to continue with the face-to-face activities. For the really ardent thespians, those who are really interested in theater, I don't see them taking a different route. Those probably who are only used to the traditional, things change all the time. Those who are used to the traditional may decide to take other disciplines, but those who really have theater in their hearts, we will understand what the situation is like. And of course, it's a temporary situation with a lot of impact. Probably some numbers will go down because teaching theater online can be very, very boring, but it will also pose a challenge to the students to find innovative ways of going about that. But on our part, of course, we are trying to prepare for the students. Some things may work, others may not work. We hope the numbers won't go down.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you for your answer. Let me go to Dr. Promise. I know we have spoken about all the stakeholders, but I know we haven't spoken much about the government itself. And I know moving forward, our relationship and collaboration with the government has to change. So what are some of the things that also, government can change? What are some of the new ways of engaging with the practitioners or also in matters of policy, especially now in this particular season?
We, coming from the academia, have a role to play when it comes to research in particular. Research, in the area of creative and cultural, institutions and the broader area of cultural work. On the continent, is begging for a lot more attention in the area that is confronting us, technology and its application in the cultural work that we do. And so therefore, what can we offer in that direction? how can the government perhaps pay a lot more attention to our research works. We will do a lot, and this current situation in itself is an opportunity for us also to tap to what needs to be explored and offer our recommendations. But is government going to be ready to be able to listen to us, and so that we can implement the recommendations practically, committedly? And so for me, that is what it is, because the issues we are confronting today are structural, basically. Most of them have always been there, but COVID is new, and that is why it is an emergency situation for us. But there are other issues, and so if we have to now look at technology and it is here to stay with us, then a lot more will be needed in terms of funding, resources, and how resourceful can our departments be to be able to measure up to the expectations of society. And so for me, and that is the point. Here in Ghana, as of yesterday or 2 days ago, the government, through the Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture, met a few stakeholders at a meeting, and it has to do with some good news for the arts sector, particularly in the area of practice. It has to do with a stimulus package of 15 million Ghana cedis, for the creative industry to support their work. Then I asked myself, how is this money going to be distributed so that at the end of the day, we can see, good results from it? So at the end of the day, if the classroom and the resources that are needed to support the work, now that we are looking at the virtual, dimension, the resources are not there, projectors are not there, computers, are not there, or they are not up to, the global standard of what it takes to have a state-of-the-art, studio resources to work with. What can we do? And so the government needs to pay a lot more attention to our needs and the research that we will be doing and the outcomes that will be, preferring to government for policy direction, to consider. And so for me, that is where I think academia has a lot to offer.
Thank you, Dr. Promise. Let me go to my brother Mazen before I go to Paulo. What new thing or what new policies is your government doing in this particular season? We have had Dr. Promise saying about the stimulus, package for the artist. Is there something something like that in Egypt? Dr. Promise has given us an example that, his government has given, a stimulus package for the artist. So I wanted to ask, is your government doing the same in Egypt?
We already have more instructions based on COVID-19 pandemic from Ministry of Culture in Egypt to return the life for all people, for all audience in theater in Egypt. We already, after the feast, from the second day of our feast, we already make the restart for a new season in our theater based on the instructions from the Ministry of Culture or also from our country based on the instructions from the ministry or from many ministries in our country. We already repeat some performances from many seasons ago to be ready on the second day of our feast. This is the date of our start. Maybe after 1 week we will start to get audience in our theater. But we already prepare some productions, but it may be after 2 months to be ready a new production, because we already know from the previous March 2020 till this month, we already stopped some productions, but already continue a small production for the official online channel. So we already started to continue our life in theater, but it will takes many times to make it, and to also continue with the full power, because we already worked with 25% of power in the theater or in another ministry of culture, any culture event or performance. So we already maybe after 1 month or 2 months, maybe we will get the new production, and also we can continue our life with 100%, with 100% of full power in theater or another on another place.
Thank you, Mazen. Let me go to Polo before I go to Professor Mugubi. Polo, how many mobile applications do you have on your phone? Like how many, roughly?
Mobile applications.
Yes, like roughly how many?
I think about 12.
About 12, yeah?
Yes.
Yes, so my question is, would an online theater application be helpful? And or do you think we are better off with just Facebook or YouTube?
We haven't cracked Facebook and YouTube. Remember, Prof spoke, I think Prof and Dr. Promise spoke about the monetization on YouTube. And we haven't actually reached that level where we can safely say we need another application for theater in particular. So, and now the Zoom also is bringing another alternatives where people are rehearsing. That production I spoke about called That Is Happening, they are rehearsing through Zoom. So I think there's a lot of apps on our phones already that needs to be explored and exploited for theater, but I would not really say we need a dedicated app for theater. We need a channel, that one we need, but not an app for now. There's too much movement in the social space and networks.
Yes.
Our topic today is how can theatre adapt to the COVID-19 pandemic, organized by Kenya International Theatre Festival, connecting cultures through theatre.
Okay, so we first utilize what we have on our phones. Thank you. So I want to start with Mugubi, each and everyone, just 10 seconds. One of the challenges that we're going to experience is, the fear of social gatherings. Even post-COVID, people are still going to be afraid, of going to the theaters. How do we not entice them, but how do we, tell them that, it's still okay? Are we the ones who are to give them assurance, or do we just rely on the government? Do we have a role in bringing the people to the theaters? Daktari, briefly.
I don't think it's our role. I don't know how comfortable people are going to be sitting 2 inches from each other in an auditorium of 1,000 people watching, a show. I think there will be more site-specific theater, or we may see more one-people shows. But we should also not just look at it negatively. For me, I see a lot of plays written during this time of quarantine. So that's still a positive. Thank you.
Thank you. So the scriptwriters are having a time of their lives, writing, and I think we will be having some of the best scripts for the century. Let me go to Dr. Promise. Do we have a role, in trying to break the fear of people coming to the theaters?
After COVID, we have more instructions to get audience with 25% of our audience. If we have, if we can invite or get in a big hall like 300 people, to invite them to come to attend the performance. We will continue this issue, but we will invite or get audience in 25% the full audience, all full theme of our performances. This is it. It will take maybe 1 month. The second day of our feast, we will get audience, but with disease instructions to invite 20% of the full seats of performance. This is to get audience and to invite them. And we hope in the future to work with 100% full power of our theater of full seats. But I need to make a comment about the mobile application based on your previous question of mobile application. If we have time. Yes, we already we didn't need to make the mobile application a separate application for theater, because we already have many applications to show your project or your performance after the production, like YouTube, like Vimeo, like if you have a channel on YouTube or Vimeo, you can watch your production and you can see everybody all over the world your production. So maybe for my opinion, we didn't need to establish or to make a mobile application for theater, because you know the cost. If you know the cost to establish or to make a mobile application separate for your event or for your theater, it will be very, very cost. Like we have in the past, we already had the plan to establish an mobile application festival, and after everything about the cost of to establish the mobile application, it was takes, this is from 1 year ago, it will take maybe $100 for 1 month if you need to establish a mobile application separate for your event or for your fest. So the cost is very expensive to make it, but you can use the application like YouTube or Vimeo or Zoom meeting or YouTube or Facebook to show and to introduce your performance or your production for many people without any cost.
Thank you so much, Mazen. So, Mr. Polo, before I go to the questions that have been asked, do you think we have a role of sensitizing, people and telling them to come back to the theater after COVID?
Python, people are already bored sitting at home. They want to go out. So we just have to follow the COVID-19 regulations. Like in South Africa, already the Minister of Arts and Culture has given regulations to say you can have performances with people up to 50 people. And as long as you follow all the regulations, you are allowed to have an audience of 50 people. So I think, yes, people are waiting for us to tell them when to come back to the theater.
Okay, so the love of theater is stronger than the fear of COVID. That's a nice one. That's a nice one. Okay, let me go to my first question, and I think any one of you can tackle it. It's not to a specific panelist, and so it's from Richard Brandt. And Richard asks, how has the COVID situation affected teachers and students who want to teach and learn? What can they do? And I think we have professors and doctors in the house, and maybe I know you had mentioned it, but maybe you can just, for the sake of Brian, just try to answer the same question again. So Professor, do you go with Professor Daktari? Can start with Professor and then Promise.
Okay, thank you. I had actually typed I don't know if my answer is right there. It is a difficult situation, and of course it has affected teachers of theater and the students in that we have had to take a blended approach where whatever we can teach online, we teach online, but we appreciate there are certain activities that require somebody to be there physically, like the projects, for us to ensure credibility of even projects, the student has to be there. And you know very well also in the arts, theory goes hand in hand. So you learn something and you do it, virtually immediately. You cannot separate. So it becomes very difficult to the extent that we teach the little we can online and then defer the practical aspects until when the situation will allow. I know there are some institutions that have gone ahead to do virtually everything online, but that also impacts on quality. So if you are to talk quality, there are certain things we cannot we cannot do when it comes to the arts. That's the unfortunate situation where we've had to defer certain activities until when the situation allows.
Dr. Promise?
Yeah, I can only add my voice to the professor's, voice, because it's a difficult situation. And we are all in this together. We are partners, and so we are facing the same situation. And how can we adapt? And culture is dynamic, so we also need to find new ways of going. And so we can only call on them also to see the need in adapting, being innovative. Here in Ghana, we are also battling with the online challenge because there are systemic issues to be resolved, and these things can't just be resolved in a day or two. And we are starting gradually, but I think day by day we'll be able to weather the storm. And so it is all about our collective determination to rise up to the call, because it is here with us, and we can't even predict what tomorrow will bring, but we have to take care of today, and we don't have a choice. And so we all need to come to the table, offer perspectives, and be ready to shoulder this new responsibility that, nature, or culture has bestowed on us. And so that is the challenge. And I know some students have the habit of giving excuses. I don't have data. I don't have a phone. But the movement, the situation of today is calling for it. So what do you have to do? You have to remain in the same traditional, system. How can you learn, and how can you mature? And so these are the challenges or the exigencies of the times. And we have to, and it takes an educated mind to be able to achieve all this. And it's part of the education they are getting to be able to be problem solvers. And so this is a problem we are all trying to solve together. And so we need them to commit so that we can help each other.
Thank you, Dr. Promise. I've been told that we can still interact on social media, and our Twitter handle is KITFest KE. That's KITFest KE. And our Facebook page is Kenya International Theatre Festival. And the hashtag that we are using today is Theatre in Africa. I've also been told that you can watch our previous webinar. It's already uploaded on our social media platform. That's on Facebook and also on YouTube. Let me get the next question. And I'm going to start with the practitioners. That's Follow and Mazen. Is theatre going to mutate? Is the next generation going to have a different kind of theatre?
Yes. The new generation of, in many countries, not in Egypt, but in many countries all over the world, yes, will follow the online production for not for theater only. If you saw many platforms, how to invite and get many audience, many viewers on social media, on YouTube, on Vimeo. So it will be the future for these platforms, because the new generation, all new generations use the device, use the laptop or mobile or iPad. And if you see your kids in your home or another homes or any place, you will find your child get the device and see everything on this device. So for new generation, yes, they will follow many productions on platform. This is the future for any production, for theater, for series, for cinema. But it may be contains a small duration, because they didn't have time to check a production or a performance or a film or anything with not a small duration. They need a small duration. So if we can enter the competition, the online competition with our theater production, we must do this issue, get this point our productions to be in competition with many productions all over the world on many platforms, to get more audience and also to be in competition between many productions all over the world. So yes.
Thank you so much. Paulo, same question.
Thank you.
Yes, I think it will change for the generations coming. Remember, there's the fourth industrial revolution coming, so we have no chance. But I don't think the one that's coming will still be called theater. It will probably be called something else, interactive digital theater. But but yes, truly, it will change for the coming generations.
Thank you. So we're going to call it interactive digital theater. That's okay. Thank you for that, Paulo.
Our topic today is how can theatre adapt to the COVID-19 pandemic, organized by Kenya International Theatre Festival, connecting cultures through theatre.
Let me take a few questions. We have one question from Dr. Shok Niklawi, and I'm going to ask Professor and Dr. Promise to answer. And I'm going to start with Professor Mugubi. And the doctor is asking, is virtual theatre theatre?
Thank you. I'll just go back to what I said before. Theatre, the essence of theatre, is a mutual presence of performers and audience in the same space, sharing the same air. But that is not possible in the current situation. So we have to adopt, you may want to call it something else, maybe it's a mongrel of a theater, but we have no option with the current situation but to embrace technology. Of course, it affects, when you go virtual, you don't have the situation where the audience affect your performance. You know, in theater, every performance of the same script is different depending on the audience that you have. That is not possible the moment you record it and upload it. But this is the best we can do at the moment. So it's still theater. That's why I agree with Paulo that things have to change. And if you even look at the history of theater, the spaces have changed right from the 6th century, where theater used to take place in a huge auditorium, then smaller spaces, proscenium, thrust, and all that. At the beginning in Greece, it was a huge stadium. So the interactive aspect is what we are going to miss a lot, which affects even the theatrical performance, but I will still call it theater. It cannot be film. Film goes with certain, expectations in terms of cinematography and all that. So it's theater that has just shifted to another platform and misses something in terms of the interactive bit.
Thank you, Professor. Dr. Promise, do you have the same sentiments as the professor?
I sure do. Virtual theater is theater. The adjective virtual in itself, qualifies theater as, just a particular theater. So it is a kind of theater. Given that we don't have a choice, but have to assume that dimension. At the end of the day, it is still a show. It is still an interaction, between performance in one sense, of course, through a different medium though, but there is that engagement. Because one, you need to have performers, doing their thing. That has to be recorded. It is that recording that now is transferred from one dimension. It moves from the dramatic theater, dimension to the film of the photographic dimension. And then this gets formatted into the digital space and gets to the what? The digital platform for you to watch. So long as you can interact with what? Human beings, albeit in a different, format, but you can engage with them, and the issues are human-centered and dealing with human concerns, and you can relate with them. It's still theater, because theater is, is a cultural activity. It's about human beings, and it reflects life or concerns. And whether you have virtual theater or what a colleague of mine is proposing, animated model of theater, which is something he thinks we should also be contemplating beyond COVID, is still theater, because as long as it is human-centered, dealing with human issues and reflecting that in an expressive manner, it is an art form which is expressed, and you can engage with that.
Thank you, Dr. Promise, for that. This is my own question. I know Mazen had mentioned that he had to cancel his festival. I know also on World Theatre Day, we had a virtual performance. And so because of the ban and the limit of the travel ban, people can't travel, and therefore we cannot, attend our festivals physically. So we have discussed about the future of theatre. Does the same fate befall our festivals? Or is there another way that we can, hold our festivals, or should we wait until, COVID-19 is over? Maybe I can start with Paulo.
In South Africa, the National Arts Festival, the one that they hold in the Eastern Cape, one of the biggest festivals in South Africa, they did not cancel. They went virtual. Productions shot their own plays and they submitted. So it all depends with the festival organizers. You may choose that it won't work for you if maybe you go virtual, so you might have to wait. But I think with the uncertainty that we are faced with, you might have to choose to go virtual rather than canceling, because we don't know how long this COVID is going to be around.
Yes, Mazen?
Yes, for our festival, Sharm El Sheikh International Theatre Festival for Youth, if also our colleagues know or didn't know that the period of our festival, it was in April, the first week in April, from 1 April to 7 April every year. So if we check the period of COVID-19, and it was in March, the climax of COVID-19 pandemic all over the world. And if you have an international festival to invite many guests, many brilliant or many important guests all over the world, not also from national issue, but for another international issue, we already prepare everything, and we already in the first week of March to finish everything, to send our tickets for some important people all over the world after our invitation for them. So we already want to check the situation in many countries all over the world in March 2020. They looked many airports all over the world in many countries from 11 March. From 11 March, airport is closed, and they already send the instruction from Ministry of Culture in other countries to stop your traveling, stop everything about traveling, because the airport is closed. So in this time we didn't have option to postpone our festival, to postpone our edition, because we already saw the situation. And also when check everything with her Excellency, the Minister of Culture in Egypt, Dr. Ines Abdel Daim, and the Mr. Governor of South Sinai, Mr. Khalid Fouda, and check everything with higher committee of our festival. We already decided to postpone our edition to save to save all people all over the world, to save them life, because the life of your guest is very, very important for you and for humanity. So in this time we didn't have option to make another option, to make it online or virtual or etc. So we decided to postpone our 5th edition, and we already in higher committee prepares to make it with interactive, because if we check the main idea of establishing any festival all over the world, we will check and get the information, because the interactive between you and your colleague from another countries to show performances, to get the workshop from and brilliant and important person from another country. This is the main point of establishing festivals. So we prefer to make our festival with interact many people all over the world, and also for interactive with audience, because this is city Al Sheikh, we already established the audience in this city, because this city already have and face for tourism. But we already, when created our festival from 2016, we already established and get people to love and to like theater in this place. We already created many audience to interactive with our festival, with our production. So that situation goes with us to postpone our festival, and we hope to make it to make the interaction between audience and between many guests all over the world.
Our topic today is how can theatre adapt to the COVID-19 pandemic, organized by Kenya International Theatre Festival, connecting cultures through theatre.
Thank you so much for the insight that we have received, and even for the very progressive discussion. And I think what I've gotten from today is that, because of the situation, we have to move from the stage to the digital space. And whether we like it or not, that's still theatre, as our professor has told us. So I just want to give each and every one of us just a few minutes, maybe to give your parting shot, a word to the practitioners, to all the stakeholders in the theatre industry, even as we move forward. So I'm going to start with Professor Mugubi, and then I'm going to go to Paulo, and then Dr. Promise, and then I'm going to finish with Mazen. So Professor, your parting shot.
What I will say is that while some of the COVID impacts are immediate, other influences, of course, may last even after the shutdown is over. So it is going to be very different, inevitably. Once this thing passes and we are all safe, like I said before, I don't think for some time people will be comfortable sitting next to each other. But it is also very important for us to hope, and as artists, giving hope to the people in the community. Yes, we are going through these very tough times, but everything has an ending, and one day, hopefully, we will be back to normal.
I think HIV and AIDS has taught us habits, that new habits supplant old ones. And I believe that while the absence of the heart grow fonder during a period like this, people will still be afraid to go out there, but there's hope. We have seen pandemics happening in previous years, and people got back to life and it became normal. So even this one, I strongly believe that it will pass. We will study it, we will understand its behaviors, we will know how to deal with it, and hopefully we will go back to the normal life.
Thank you, Paulo. And we are praying that we return back to the new normal.
Our topic today is how can theatre adapt to the COVID-19 pandemic, organized by Kenya International Theatre Festival, connecting cultures through theatre.
Before Dr. Promise comes in, I have to apologize because there's a very sensitive issue that left my mind, and that is the mental health or the mental state of our artists. And I will give an example here in Kenya. We have an artist who is a comedian but is undergoing depression because of the economic difficulties. Dr. Promise, you can answer this. So how do we address the issue of mental health and issues to do with depression among artists in production, in production companies? I know we have departments, we have production departments. Is there a need to create, a new department to cater for the emotional needs of the artists, or is it important?
Thank you. Absolutely. It is very, very necessary because we have found ourselves in a very difficult situation. It's a moment of crisis and we are all trying to adjust. And since our emotions and psychological, abilities are at risk, we need to have the needed balance to be able to get going. And so it is a duty call to all duty bearers to be able to make provision for that. Because at the end of the day, if you have performers coming, to work and they are not of a sound mind, in a sound body, how can they perform, as desired? And so that is something very important for us to consider, because what we are even looking at is a much more complicated issues, because we've always had systemic, structural, challenges with us. And for me, my heart is with the freelancers, that has to rely on gigs every now and then to be able to survive in the industry. So you can imagine that freelancer now having to deal with the needs of, going virtual and how much it can cost him or her. And so we need, a room to be created for how, mental issues in that regard can be managed properly. Else we may have most of our artists having breakdown. So we need to have the needed balance. It is not only their physical being we are interested in, but their holistic being. And the mental component is very important, and that needs equal attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Promise. Before we finish with Mazen, let me go to Polo. Do we have any artists in South Africa who are undergoing the same thing, mental health issues and depression?
Yes, as the numbers are bad, Python, we have a lot of artists who are actually going through depression, and it's becoming bad because this COVID has brought a lot of challenges, even though government is providing relief to some extent, but relief is only for a particular period of time. We've been 3 months into the lockdown in South Africa and things are just getting worse and worse. The economy is not functioning back. So yes, there's a lot of artists who are experiencing depression at this moment.
Our topic today is how can theatre adapt to the COVID-19 pandemic, organized by Kenya International Theatre Festival, connecting cultures through theatre.
So, Professor Mugubi, if you were given an opportunity to write a script during the COVID season, give us the title of your script or the title of your play. So each and everyone has to answer the question. So we start with Professor. Title of your play?
Title of my play?
Yes, the title of your play.
Oh my goodness, can I be the last one?
Okay. So let's start with Polo. Let's start with Polo.
Hey, that's a difficult one, but I'm thinking something like Corona. Your turn will come. Your time will come. Corona, your time will come.
That's a good one. Corona, your time will come. Thank you, Dr. Promise. Sorry, this wasn't in the script. Give us the title of your script.
Corona, you are under arrest. Because you are arresting it. You are trying to arrest it. And,
Yes, we are trying to arrest it.
God willing, inshallah, we will arrest Corona because life must go on and the show must go on.
The show must go on, and so we have to arrest Corona. Corona, you are under arrest, Professor.
My title would be Heavenly Hell. Heavenly Hell.
Heavenly Hell.
Yes, of course, COVID has come with a lot of negative things, but there are also a lot of positive. Families being together at the same time. So Heavenly Hell is an oxymoron that collocates,
Okay.
heaven which has positives and hell which has negatives. So how COVID has put positives and negatives side by side. That would be my title. Thank you.
Okay. Use layman's language, but anyway, it's okay. We're going to try and Google whatever it is you've said. So, Mazen.
Yes.
So I was asking the panelists if they were given an opportunity to write a script, what would the title of their play be or their script? So tell us, if you're given an opportunity to write a script, what would the title be?
Corona, I will kill you.
Corona will kill you.
Yes.
Okay, so
because when the Corona started, and be aggressive with this because we have no appearance for Corona, so I'm ready to Corona to kick Corona, to kill Corona.
Yeah.
Like
okay.
This.
Okay. Corona will kill you. Okay.
I will kill you.
I will not me. You're not saying you'll kill me. You're saying you'll kill Corona.
Not you.
Okay.
Not you.
So,
You are my colleague. No. I talk and speak about Corona, not you.
Okay, gentlemen, we have to finish this. I want to really appreciate each and every one of you for finding time and just coming and having this particular discussion. Thank you, Professor Mugubi, all the way from Kenya. Thank you, Gwetsmang Polo from South Africa. Thank you, Mazen from Egypt, and Dr. Promise all the way from Ghana. I really appreciate your time. And I think it has been a time of learning, and the discussion has been very, very helpful for all of us in the theater industry. So just to make an announcement that the next webinar is going to be on the 5th of August, and we're going to host government ministers to discuss about a theater and how, policies, government policies can help the theater practitioners during this time of COVID. So I want to encourage each and everyone, let's meet on the 5th of August. You don't want to miss as we hear what the ministers will have to say for us. So from me, I want to say thank you, Asante Sana, for being wonderful panelists, and also for the participants. I think we have 23 participants. So thank you for your patience, and thank you for being with us up to the end. So without any further ado, I want to declare the webinar finished. Let's kill the webinar.
Thank you for signing up for Theatre in Africa webinar series. Your presence and contribution is highly valued. Theatre in Africa webinars is a series of 4 online seminars or discussions aimed at bringing together African theatre practitioners, academia, government officials in charge of theatre activities, development partners, and donors to discuss the effects of COVID-19 pandemic to the theatre industry in Africa, government support during the pandemic, how theatre can adapt to COVID-19 pandemic, and towards a united theatre industry in Africa. Powered by Kenya International Theatre Festival, connecting cultures through theatre.